Welcome everyone to the monthly dispute resolution roundtable breakfast co-sponsored by the Association for Conflict Resolution of Greater New York and the City University of New York Dispute Resolution Center at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I'm Maria Volpe. I'm a professor at John Jay College. I started these breakfasts after 9/11. Today is our 258th breakfast. Until March 2020, we met in person at John Jay over bagels and coffee. Since April 2020, we have been virtual. These sessions are recorded and the recordings are posted on the websites of the two co-sponsors, www.jjay.cuny.edu/dispute resolution and www.acrgny.org. Each month, these breakfasts are put together by a wonderful team that I work with, including Julie Denny, Matthew Latimer, Nikki Borofsky, Emily Skinner, and Chloe Choi. We are so delighted to have with us Katie Hyden this morning from Essential Partners, formerly known as the Public Conversation Project. Since 1989, they've been doing amazing, groundbreaking work in this field. And we're so excited to have you with us, Katie, this morning, and look forward to your thoughts and comments and presentation. I am going to turn it over to Matthew, who will introduce Katie. Take it away, Matthew.
Great. Thanks so much, Maria. So Katie Hyden is the co-executive director of Essential Partners. She completed her master's degree in international negotiation and conflict resolution at Tufts University's Fletcher School, where her research addressed foreign policy and religious conflicts. Katie has held appointments as a visiting fellow and lecturer at Tufts University, where she developed and co-taught a course entitled Dialogue, Identity, and Civic Action, and as a consultant for Harvard Medical School's Scientific Citizenship Initiative to co-design a course on science communication for ethical community engagement. During Katie's tenure at Essential Partners, she has served as a program lead on collaborations with local grassroots groups, churches, foundations, and colleges, training stakeholders to design, convene, and facilitate dialogues across differences. She has helped communities hold dialogues about topics such as the role of guns in American life, ethnic violence, and civil society, racial and ethnic diversity, as well as campus inclusion and belonging. Prior to joining Essential Partners, Katie served as a mediator and independent consultant in conflict resolution processes and helped develop and manage the first university-wide interreligious institute at Pepperdine University. She was awarded Harvard's program on negotiation summer fellowship to support her research and work with Search for Common Good in Lebanon.
Okay.
And with that, I will turn it over to Katie.
Thank you. Katie?
Good morning. Thank you, y'all. Especially thank you to Maria, to Julia, to Matthew, Nikki, Emily, and Chloe for organizing this incredible roundtable and for hosting us this morning. It's such a joy to be here with so many folks so early on this Thursday morning. My name is Katie Hyden, and thank you for that lovely introduction, Matthew. Before we get started, as we transition from that lovely networking session into this session, I want to just give folks an opportunity to come into the space and introduce yourselves in the chat. I'm going to ask yourselves to introduce yourselves by sharing a question or goal that you're bringing with you today, and also something that you're leaving behind to be here today. And we'll put that in the chat as well. I want to thank my colleague Molly Zucker, who's here, and we'll be putting things in the chat as we go. But again, take a moment and just reflect before you put it in the chat. What's a question or goal you're bringing with you today? And what's something that you're leaving behind to be here?
Nikki has put the question in the chat.
Sorry, Molly, I will let you put the questions in the chat.
Don't be sorry. I'm so grateful for the help.
That's so funny.
I really appreciate all that y'all are both bringing with you, but also leaving behind. Grading is a tough thing to leave behind. Your morning routine. Really appreciating setting that aside for this. Yeah, I am based in Boston and the weather is preparing to get very cold this weekend. It's really helpful for me to hear some of the things that you're bringing and hoping for today as well. And an hour and a half roundtable, I will always make the disclaimer that we will not be able to get to all of it, but I think that we can get to enough of it. All right, I'll give you a couple more moments while I get ready to share my screen. All right. So today we will be focused on disrupting old patterns, on using agreements to invite constructive dialogue across differences. We'll also be talking about a couple of other tools, but before we begin, I want to introduce you a little bit to Essential Partners. As Maria mentioned, we were founded as Public Conversations Project. So if you have read about our work there, we are the same organization, just in this new name, and we have been there since about 2016. Our mission is to give people the means to strengthen their relationships, deepen belonging, and renew hope in their communities. We envision a world of thriving communities strengthened by difference and connected by trust. We were founded in 1989, and I'll talk more about our stories and our work in a bit, but I just want to start by saying most of our work these days is in training. We train about 3,000 folks every year to communicate effectively across differences and to hold space for conversations across differences that are constructive and engaging in classrooms, in town halls, in faith congregations, book clubs, the lot. And all of those folks impact over 100,000 people every year in the cornerstones of their community and in civic life. In addition to that training, we offer ongoing coaching and consultation to support communities as they take this work and make it their own and really embed it into their culture of who they are as an organization, as a community, so that they can navigate their most pressing challenges, whatever that means, moving forward together. Today, what I want to do is open with a quick reflection that might sound quite obvious, especially to those of you who've been in the field, but it's intended to kind of get into our bodies a little bit and feel why it is that we do things the way that we do. I'll talk a little after that reflection. I'll talk a little bit more about our work, share some stories from the field, talk a little bit about why we approach our work the way we do, and then we will get into that tool that you can take home. I know a couple of you mentioned that, around agreements and using agreements and co-creating agreements with a group so that you can meet their needs and actually build something together that enables you to kind of disrupt what isn't working and lean into what will work. We'll wrap up with some time for questions and then head to our closing. So as we do that, I do want to say a few words about the technology that we'll be using. We're actually going to talk a lot about a container today. A container are the structures and patterns of speaking, listening, and facilitating in a conversation. Every conversation has a container. It's often not thought of intentionally, but every conversation has one. So we want to be intentional about the container that we're creating in all of our work. And it can sometimes feel a little bit strange, but we've all been on Zoom for a couple of years now, so none of this should be super surprising. Given the size of this group, we'll ask you to use the chat box to ask a question or respond to a question that we pose in the group, just like we did a moment ago. In the big group, we'll ask you to remain muted. And at specific points, we actually might invite folks to use the hand raise function at the bottom of your screen and ask a question verbally, depending on how things go and how we're feeling with time. But for most of the time, we'll ask that you remain muted. We'll also invite you to have something nearby that you can take notes on, that you can share. Lastly, I want to just honor that especially when you have a group like this, there are many impulses with which to use the chat. And y'all do what you need to do, especially if you're connecting with folks who you haven't connected with for a while. I also want to acknowledge that the chat, paying attention to the chat and people can be quite distracting. So feel free to take what you need. And if you are able to set aside the desire to use the chat as we're going through this, that would be great. Except for if you have any technical difficulties or if you can't hear me. And if I don't see your chat or your question, Molly, who is here to support, will let me know. So lastly, we'll invite you to take care of yourself. I will cue points at which I'll invite y'all to turn off your video. I know that I'm pinned here now, so if that's something that you'd like to do, that's totally fine. Get up, move around, grab some coffee, and we will go ahead and jump in. The last thing that I'll share are our agreements for this space today. I figure if we're talking about agreements today, I should also use them. So these are some example agreements that we often use in our work. We'll start with these and we'll talk a little bit more about them in a bit. But I want to just acknowledge that you can always pass or pass for now if you're not ready to or do not wish to respond. It's much more common and easy to do on chat, but that's an important, and that is already in the chat for you as well, if you are a visual learner. But yes, so you never have to respond. That creates a lot of agency for us, that every time that someone opts in, they're opting in to participate. Second, we'll ask that you speak one at a time and not engage in side conversations. So you can use the hand raise if you'd like to ask a question. We'll invite you to move up and move back. So if you notice that you've already asked 3 questions or something like that, we'll invite you to just take a step back and allow and invite other people into the space to ask that question. Similarly, if you're a person who might have a question but don't want to bother anyone or might not be the right question or the perfect question, I invite you to just move up into that space as well. Lastly, we'll invite you to check out assumptions by asking questions, to speak only for yourselves, and to honor confidentiality upon request. The agreements are not in a slide, but I put them in the chat here so you can refer back to them if you would like. Any questions before we move on about the container we're creating today or what some of these pieces are? All right. Well, we are going to, as I said, start with a reflection. So what I'll do is I'll add some prompts into the chat to invite your participation as we go. But before we do anything else, I want to give you just a minute or two to think of a time. It could be a time at a recent family gathering over the holidays, maybe a recent conversation with a colleague, maybe a part of your ADR practice, a mediation or negotiation, as a mediator, as a negotiator, when you became upset because someone you care about said something disparaging or hurtful about something important to you. Maybe it was about a core social or political value or belief. Maybe it was about someone else you love, some part of your identity, something like that. Don't worry, we will never ask you to share this experience in this space. But think about something that feels a little bit ripe, that has a little bit at stake that has some stakes to it, but not something so overwhelming that you'll get lost in it if you think about it for a few minutes. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think and then ask a few questions about that experience. Right. Take a moment to have something in mind. Now, in that moment where you became upset because someone you care about said something hurtful or disparaging about something that's important to you, I'll ask these questions. You are welcome to put your responses in the chat. You are under no obligation to. So feel free to take what you need. First, what sensations were you aware of in your body? And that question is in the chat as well, if you would like to add your thoughts. What sensations were you aware of in your body? Tightening up, shut down, tensed. I hear that thought. Harvey, that's so hard. Disoriented, heat, numbness, sadness, anger, yes. So it's interesting to see that some of y'all feel in your body some of these emotions, and that's totally fine. We'll also get to that in a moment as well. But pain in the pit of your stomach, tightness in your chest, absolutely. All right. Second, because some of you are already a real ache in your heart, yes. Because some of you are already there. I want to invite a second question. What thoughts about you or the other person were going through your head? What emotions did you experience? Invalidated, felt betrayed, yes. Anger, sadness. How dare you? Absolutely. Disappointment. Yeah, you can be pissed off, like you weren't being heard again. Felt like you had to educate them, yes. Self-conscious that you might be wrong, absolutely. Questioning your own self, your own beliefs. Confusion. Every curse word I could think of, ready to lash out. That's a great transition to our third question. Our third question is, in that moment, what did you feel tempted to do? This could include actions that you took, but it also might just be those that you felt an impulse to do and decided ultimately not to. But what did you feel tempted to do? Run and hide, curse them out, cut the person out of your life. Absolutely. Go sad, blow it up and have it out. Absolutely. Defend, push back, walk out. Absolutely. Go visit her. Yeah. Absolutely. Shame them. Call them on the carpet. Absolutely. Absolutely. So these temptations are so real, whether we choose to do them or not. My last question is this. Now, in retrospect, take a couple of seconds to think about this. Is there a way that you could have responded that would have left both you and the other person feeling like they are heard and respected, and you are heard and respected? What could you have done or said that would have left you feeling like you brought your best self to that interaction? So this last question is, what could you have done instead? Thinking back on it. And feel free to take a couple seconds to think if you'd like to. Absolutely. That's why you're here. Absolutely. Acknowledge their perspective. Take a deep breath. Go for a walk. Talk about how you feel. Yeah, believe that all is well. Listen first. Pause, ask for time, and take some time before you respond. Wait until later to address it. Get curious about their perspective. Yeah, you know that you don't have to respond. Reframe. So I wanted to start with this reflection because I wanted to start by understanding that we have innate capacity to engage even in difficult moments, but it is really hard to do so when we feel like our very identities are being attacked. I know that this exercise might not be new for all of y'all, but if you've been in this field for a while, but I wanted to start here to get us into our bodies a little bit, to understand what makes having difficult conversations hard, and start with what makes our model a little bit different than other folks in the ADR field. So I want to start by sharing some slides. If you are a person who would like to not use your screen, I actually was mentioning in the intro when we were logging on this morning that I had a concussion a couple weeks ago. And so so I have been trying to limit my screen time, but I think that that's healthy. It makes me want to do it more often anyway. So if you are a person who at this point would like to be off video, to be listening, to be looking at screens, feel free to do that while I just share some slides. So I want to start with the brain. In moments of crisis, our brain has evolved to serve us, to make sense of things very quickly, to help us survive. And when in crisis, that is more and more important. It's important to note that whether the threat we experience is physical or whether the threat is to our sense of identity, our beliefs, our values, our worldview, even our sense of belonging, this threat is registered identically in the brain. This brain does not distinguish between emotional and physical pain. In those moments, we can't pay attention to everything. So our brain is automatically sorting. It does this all the time, but particularly in moments of crisis. And in responding to threat, we're not aware of how or what we're filtering. It's like that moment where maybe here you actually, sometimes you say the air conditioning, but today maybe the heating. You hear the heating go on, and you realize that actually the heating wasn't on before. Or all of a sudden you hear the heater click and you're like, oh my goodness, has it been on this whole time? But now you can't unhear it. So our brain focuses attention on what it thinks matters. So maybe, I hope, right now you're listening to me, but your attention would shift in an instant if you heard glass shattering. The other day, my dog was sleeping all the way across the house, and heard me open the fridge to get some yogurt out and came running, right? We do the same thing. It's the same in conversations. We don't listen to every single word a person is saying. We're consciously filtering and unfiltering. And this happens all the time. And this is what I find really interesting about this reflection that we did this morning, because we are hardwired to react rather than to act. We don't think about the why first, we just do. So, oops, excuse me. So we say the thing, we do the thing, we feel paralyzed and we stay silent. Those impulses that you are noticing in your body is your body preparing for that fight, flight, or freeze response. Feeling pain in your chest, tightening of muscles, trying to feel small, trying to feel big, seeing your heart rate speed up. That's adrenaline coursing through you, ready to respond. So, in moments of physical threat, this fast thinking is what keeps us alive. If we are being chased in the woods by a bear, we don't want to be thinking if that bear is an herbivore or a carnivore, right? We just want to go. But in relationships, it can help us get stuck. And when we feel that sense of threat, our perceptions narrow. We actually can't think rationally. We can't get curious. We can't collaborate. We're more prone to generalizations and oversimplifications. Our sense of vigilance is heightened, and it makes us want to defend ourselves. All of that is hardwired in us. All those things that you mentioned at the end, those things that you could have done instead, those tapping into curiosity, that taking a break, all of that becomes more difficult to access because our bodies take over. And that's that fast thinking. So in those moments, we lose access to those pieces. So you're all familiar with this cycle, perhaps, but we just kind of went through it, right? If you find yourself triggered, you find yourself thinking, oh my gosh, did they just actually say that? You start paying attention only for the things that will help defend yourself or attack the other person. Your listening narrows. And then you act based off of what you pay attention to. So you do attack yourself, or you attack the other person or defend yourself. Now, this is where it becomes a cycle, because the person who may or may not have intended the impact that they had on you reacts to your reaction. They become defensive. They start saying things like, why are you like this? Why are you taking this so personally? Why are you making a big deal out of this? Which sparks you to defend yourself because they have only paid attention to what will help themselves defend themselves or attack you. And once we are in this loop, our bodies are flooded with hormones, and it becomes harder and harder for us to act instead of react. This vicious cycle is self-perpetuating and reinforcing. And when it scales up, we see this play out in our communities. We see this play out in our institutions, in our schools, because in the best of times, we are all incredibly complex and varied people with multiple aspects to our identity, with varied experiences and beliefs that all inform who we are. But when we experience a sense of threat, we only start paying attention to what will help ourselves defend ourselves in a group or attack the other. So we start maximizing differences between us and the other. And we start minimizing differences within the group. That can expand and increase. And you can start seeing charges of misinformation and hidden agendas, more stereotyping, slogans and blaming. People pay less and less attention to the costs. And this tells us that every system, this is how I started, every system is perfectly designed for the results that it gets. Whether or not it's designed intentionally or unintentionally, it is predictable. Now, our work at Essential Partners helps communities get unstuck. We were actually founded by family therapists, which I find really interesting when it comes to ADR, because I was trained in traditional mediation, negotiation, ADR tools. And what I love about family therapists is that they are not trying to eradicate conflict within their families. They never will. They acknowledge that it's impossible, but what they can do is help recognize the patterns. You might recognize in your own family that when things go south, everyone responds in pretty predictable ways. You can say, oh, my mom, when she does this, she always does this. And I know that if I were to bring up something hard with my sibling, they would say this, or they would do this. But that doesn't mean that my mom or my sibling would react the same way in their workplace or with their friends. But for some reason, that system has reinforced that role, has reinforced that pattern. So our goal is to get into a different cycle where people listen. All the things that you wanted to do, all the things that you mentioned that you could have done instead, to listen for what matters most, to pause, to reflect, to take some time, to share what matters most to you, to talk about your emotions and what you're experiencing, and to ask curious questions. None of this is rocket science, but we believe that if you can change how you have a conversation, you can change the relationship. The structuring of the conversation itself can change relationships and understanding across lines of difference. And if you can change the relationship, you can change what's possible in a community, and you can shift culture. If every system is perfectly designed for the results it gets, many of our institutions at the heart of our community life aren't designed to invite constructive, curious conversations across differences. And when people don't have the skills and infrastructure to engage across differences in tough moments, we revert back to that polarization graphic. We revert back to those vicious cycles, and it can deepen senses of isolation, division, and mistrust. So what we want to do is we want to help institutions and communities be more effective and having conversations in constructive ways where everyone feels heard and valued and taken seriously. Interestingly, that does not require unity or common ground. I saw that in the chat earlier, that it doesn't require people to change their minds. In fact, oftentimes people will deepen their own sense of understanding of themselves. But I really believe that when we have a critical mass of organizations who've transformed their cultures to collaborate and they can collectively transform how their communities address their most pressing challenges. So I want to take a little bit to talk about how we do that for another about 10 minutes before we give you a chance to try it out yourselves. So this particular, as we kind of go more into our model, I want to say a little bit about how this connects with ADR. It's a more upstream approach than traditional ADR. It's more like transformational mediation. It's particularly helpful when needs go beyond a simple agreement and maybe into ongoing, maybe it's as simple as implementation of the agreement, but it also might be ongoing work together. I remember mediating a couple of neighbors in civil court, and they had sued each other over, I think, a lawnmower or a snowplow or something. And they fought for 2 hours over the settlement, over something about how often they were mowing the other one's lawn or who's taking the other lawnmower. And then so we battled it out for 2 hours in court. They got to an agreement, and I was exhausted. And I'm getting ready to go give it to the clerk. And I see them chatting about giving each other a ride home, right? Because they are neighbors. They will continue to be in relationship with each other. So it was my job as a mediator, not just to get them to an agreement, but also to get them to a point where they can turn to the other and say, do you have a ride home? Perhaps it's a couple going through separation who still have to co-parent. Or if you're dealing with issues that stem from systemic challenges or patterns, especially in an institution or community. Our work is about actually creating cultures of healthy conflict resolution through scaling capacities and structures to handle the most difficult moments. So we'll begin by looking at family systems, at narrative therapy. We use appreciative inquiry, conflict transformation, social identity theory. That's neither here nor there unless you're an academic particularly interested in these things. But then we start by saying, what is your purpose here and who are the people who need to be involved? We design, we prepare, and then the very top of this pyramid or iceberg is the actual facilitation in the room. That there's so much work that's done on the design front, which is part of the reason why I wanted to focus on that this morning. So we do this mapping and customization work, we interview, we cut custom design needs, then we go do the training, the facilitation and the design, and then we do continuing support. So I want to share a couple of stories about what this actually looks like in practice, just give a couple of examples. One actually came from the ADR world, from a mediator who realized that she needed to be more involved, that she couldn't avoid conversations about Black Lives Matter and policing after a barbecue where there were some mixed interactions between communities of color, especially her children, and the police. She realized that her mediation skills wouldn't be enough, and so we went and we supported them with training. We trained police leaders and police officers alongside communities of color, community leaders. And they have actually created not just a series of community conversations that have built relationships and understanding and trust between those folks, but they've also built a multiracial alliance that continues to use these work and talking about what tangible things they can do to improve community safety in their community. At a school, actually, wildly also in North Carolina, just down the road, they decided after the 2016 election that they wanted to do better in helping their students have conversations about political differences. They wanted to build a school-wide infrastructure. And just after we trained their first group, they had a school walkout around gun safety in schools. And they recognized in the school in North Carolina that there were going to be students who walked out and students who have gone hunting on the weekends with their families and students who have guns in the home. So they were able to take this walkout, but then add into it a dialogue where they talked about what safety meant to their community. Since then, these students have actually facilitated dialogues with their parents on mental health and parenting during the pandemic. They have had conversations about stress, about racial equity, about gender, about the 2020 election. And it's become part of how they do things. We've trained over 100 faculty members who are now using this in their classrooms. Similarly, at a college, they wanted to support their student retention and their academic citizenship. They wanted to help their students see themselves as empowered. And so we trained all of their faculty who teach their first year seminar, as well as over 100 students who mentor those first year students in orientation. And they've held dialogues on religious diversity, the presidential election, immigration, campus protests, freedom of expression. And we've seen over the course of 5 years that actually this work has led to better student outcomes and a stronger feeling of belonging among first-year students. And again, now dialogue is embedded into their strategic plan and how they do things. So we see that in our work that 92% of participants report greater trust in people who hold differences of beliefs, values, and identities. We see that people say they feel more heard and understood by the other side, and that people have relationships across difference that last more than a year after that initial engagement. So when it works, that is what we're trying to create. So this small snippet is just going to be a very small taste of what this can look like, and of what you can actually take back. This is an exercise that's meant to be adaptable, and groups will sometimes have people discuss this first and then come back to the large group with ideas. You can also send these to parties in advance of a mediation and draft agreements from them. You can use it in your classes. You can use it in your team meetings. And it's designed to help co-create a container for your conversation that disrupts old patterns and creates dynamics for more constructive conversation. So again, it might feel a little bit artificial at first, but that's by design. We want to invite you to do things a little bit differently to support a different conversation. So in this exercise, you will end up with 3 distinct components of your container. And this will all be in a handout that we share in just a moment. The first thing that you're going to be doing is thinking about structures. Structures are things that you can put in place as a facilitator, teacher, leader, or mediator and hold as part of the process. So examples of structures might be giving each person the same amount of time to respond to a question before opening up the conversation, or perhaps having folks pause at certain points to write down themes or questions. It could also be, and when I mediate now, it happens very rarely, but I generally give people a couple of questions to think about as I get the room set up for mediation, even if I've just met them 20 seconds ago. Structures act a bit like guardrails, and they're to support and bring people back to their purpose and the people. The second thing that you'll be creating are agreements. Agreements are observable and objective behaviors that a group of people agree to abide by during their work together. This is the co-creation part, because it's important that the parties or participants feel like these agreements are theirs, coming from their needs rather than what you think they need. It creates shared ownership and legitimacy for you if you need to bring people back, or if you need to step in to bring people back to them. I think a couple of people actually mentioned, how do you bring people back to agreements with legitimacy? This is if you are co-created, if a party feels like it's theirs, it's very simple. You just say, we agreed to do this. Is it all right if you try a different way of doing this thing? Finally, we'll invite you to think about intentions. These might be motivations, encouragements, or reminders that a team can choose to try to hold themselves to while working together or engaging in a dialogue or mediation. No one can say whether or not they're being held. I can't tell someone, for instance, that they're no longer in their best intention. They're no longer being kind, because they might see themselves as kind. An agreement would be what kindness looks like in practice. It's observable and objective. An intention might say, we'll respect each other. We'll give ourselves grace when we're not perfect. We'll try to stay present in the room. So for those who are here live, we're putting a PDF in the chat. So if you're a visual reader and want to read along, you're welcome to, but you don't need the PDF to participate. So if you're viewing this as a recording, you can still do this full exercise. So it's going to operate similar to the last piece, the last exercise that we did, and then I'll read a reflection and then add some questions to the chat and invite y'all to add your responses if you'd like. The prompt is in the handout as well on page 1. So imagine a context, community, or institution where you are a stakeholder in conversations that impact you, your experience in that place and your future in that place. It could be in a dispute resolution setting, but it could also be a class, a board meeting, a team meeting, an academic collaboration, even a community hall meeting. In this meeting, the leader asks a question. And the first 7 responses to that question have all generally reflected the same way of thinking or looking at the problem. They've all largely been in agreement. As you've listened, you've realized actually that your perspective or beliefs on this issue are different from everyone else who's spoken up at this point. In fact, there is something about who you are that you might want to share, that you might feel is important to you, but not necessarily obvious to people who don't know you. Sharing this might actually help people understand the issue differently if they could hear it, but you're not sure if you could, should, or would share at this point. Feels risky. You know that sharing your perspective might help you be understood for who you are if it was heard. Besides, you think it's important for other people to hear different ideas. And if you want to have your perspective included in discussions as you move forward. You think people are missing something important. and they aren't understanding some core piece of this discussion without your perspective. In this moment, though, you've got a decision to make as to whether you share that thing or not. Again, we won't ask you to share what that thing is in this hypothetical scenario, but we want you to take a few moments to reflect on what you might need to be in place in order to share what matters to you. So if you can see the handout, you'll see that there's a worksheet on page 2. And you can actually fill in those structures, agreements, and intentions that you would need. Again, structures are things that the facilitator can put in place. Agreements are things that are co-created by the group about ways they communicate, and intentions are things you want to hold on to. You don't need to be perfect in splitting those 3 things up, but we offer them as ways to differentiate what we're talking about. If you can see the resource, you can see that on pages 3 and 4, there are some example structures, example agreements, and example intentions so that you don't have to start from scratch. But I also invite you to just add your own. And I would love for you to add those in the chat when we get to that point as well, because it's great to continue learning from each other. The tools are much less important than making sure that you're trying to create a container that meets the needs of the group. So for this, you're speaking for yourself. What would you need to be in place to share something that felt tender for you, but you weren't sure that you should, could, or would share it? I'll give you just until about 9:20. I'll give you till 9:20, 9:21 to just think about this, to think about what you might need in place. And then we'll start adding things to the chat. But for now, just think and take some notes for yourself. Thanks, Alfonso. We'll give folks a couple of minutes just to reflect and take notes on what you would need. And then we'll start adding things to the chat. Take about another minute or so. All right. So as you, for yourself, decide whether you're going to share that thing or not, what would you need to be in place? Let's see. Ooh, y'all are all in. I'm actually going to go one at a time through these, but I will try to come back to the things at the beginning. Let's start with structures. What should the facilitator or leader of these conversations be thinking about as the structures to help you take that step, or take others help that take their step to share fully? Yes, there is a risk-benefit analysis. And that can happen by helping you feel more comfortable in the space and understanding what the purpose is. So that's a lot of our work on the front end. To be invited in, that's a structure that is a great structure. How people are invited in and brought into the space matters. And some of our longer trainings, we'll talk about David Rock's SCARF, which is a series of things that people scan for when they enter a room to decide whether or not they want to approach or avoid. Highly recommend David Rock's SCARF if you're interested in that. An awareness of the dangers of groupthink. Absolutely. So one structure that you could put in place might be to actually do a little bit of educating on what happens in groupthink. And modeling. Yeah, absolutely. Modeling. Speaking without interruption. Absolutely. That's a great one. Let's see. Ground rules. Absolutely. Clarity of purpose. Clarity of purpose is a big one. That often is the biggest challenge or the biggest thing that we focus on in a first interaction with an organization. Everyone has time to share. Absolutely. And David Rockscarf, I'll add that in afterwards. Minimize distractions. Absolutely. All right. Knowing their concerns will be heard. So there are a couple of things here that I just want to name. Thank you, Nikki. A couple of things that I just want to name about something that makes difficult conversations hard. Because as a facilitator, I can never guarantee that people will not hate you for having a different assessment or opinion. I will never be able to, and a lot of people ask in workplaces especially, I need an agreement in place that can guarantee that I won't get fired for what I say. And I have to say, you know what, I'm so sorry, but that is something that I can't guarantee, that 6 months from now, that you won't get fired for a different reason, but this will be the reason. And that has to be a lot of trust. You have to build a lot of trust. So there's a catch-22 here. And I think that's why I love all of these self-reflective piece, the risk-benefit analysis that you get to do, because every person is going to be doing that when they come into a room for a difficult conversation. So our job as a facilitator is to help create space that makes it easier for people to do that risk-benefit analysis. And if we co-create it wisely, then we can also invite them to say, you know what, this will be worth it. I think that this will be worth it. I think this could be different this time. And that's really hard. So you maybe one example, especially if your decision is to just shut up instead of to be hated for what you say, maybe my decision as a facilitator is actually to do light group dialogues first, to give people an opportunity to be heard and seen for who they are among people who feel similarly before we jump into dialogue across differences. Or maybe I actually start with a much more easy to access dialogue that builds trust and understanding first before jumping into that, right? So these are all decisions that you can make as structures. Now let's talk about agreements. What agreements would need to be present in the group before you'd be willing to share something that differed with others from the group? And Molly's put that question in the chat. Yes, Mac, you can definitely add co-facilitators or conveners that supplement credibility or increase trust. That's a structure and I love it. Fully heard without interruption. Absolutely. Agreement not to interrupt. Very easy for a facilitator to step in on if folks interrupt. Having time to respond. Absolutely. Confidentiality. We'll talk about trust and respect in a moment. I love the skunk at the garden party as well. That's great. Confidentiality, as we wait for a couple other responses, confidentiality is always an interesting one. It's always the agreement that as a facilitator, as a mediator, I say this is the only agreement that you need to agree to, but I can't enforce. So I can't step in if 2 weeks from now, I'm not going to pop up at the water cooler if you happen to breach confidentiality at work. Great question about equitable and equal time. Actually, those two things are different. So there is a world in which each person has the same amount of time. So for instance, we might have a go around where each person has 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes to respond to the same question. That's a very common thing to do, especially if you have people who have similar needs, who have requested similar things. It also can share airspace a little bit, but it's not necessarily equitable. So one of the things that we always do with our groups is to see what equitable time sharing looks like to them. Now, it might be as simple as if you have folks who are requiring interpretation or who have English as a second language and your dialogue is in English or your conversation is in English, maybe that person gets a little bit of extra time. Some mediations or some dialogues will actually say each person will get all the time that they need. There are two qualifications that I generally give to giving each person the time that they need. First is making sure that you've set aside an appropriate amount of time to make sure that everyone gets that opportunity, because everyone will need that opportunity and y'all could be there for a while. The second thing that I'll say is that it has a risk of actually reinforcing existing norms. For instance, CEOs, white male CEOs tend to take up a lot of space. And if you say each person will take the time that they need, the white male CEO could take up 20 minutes and everyone else could take up 30 seconds. And that's actually not disrupting the kind of vicious cycle that we want to see if we want to see people engaging more. So equitable time could actually look really different. Absolutely, you could do a caucus. You could do private sessions. Those are structures actually that you can do in place as well.
Katie, time, Katie?
Yes.
Andrew put something in the chat about an expectation that time and space will be given not just based on different individuals, but on the basis of differing viewpoints so that the majority doesn't dominate the time. And I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that for 1 second.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Molly. I did not even see that. So thank you, that's perfect. That's a great question. Part of our design process is in doing our best to ensure a full complexity of views. And I think that means a couple of things. First, it means that no single person ever feels like they are the only one of their type, whatever their type is. We don't want a single person to be the only woman or non-binary person, the only person of color, the only Republican, the only maybe religious person, whatever it might be. Maybe the only non-scientists in a group of scientists. We don't want that to be so we want to design the space accordingly. But we also want to recomplexify folks. And so we actually really work hard, and I know that there are a couple of organizations out there who do this differently. We work really hard not to put people back in bubbles or in buckets that could lead to more stereotyping. And so even though we want to make sure that no one feels like that we want to be representative, we want to be as inclusive as possible for the purposes of that dialogue, we also don't want to token folks, and we don't want to say, okay, the Republicans get this amount of time and the Democrats get this amount of time, because it puts people back. I know that the old mediation saying you don't want to have two parties across the table. You want to have two parties on the same side of the table looking at the problem. That's what we want to create here as well. So you can do a lot of work on the front end to get the right people in the room for the right purposes, but you also don't want to reinforce those divisions that are already there. Thanks, Molly. And yes, I think it's really important to be thinking about a lot of these pieces, and that everyone is going to be unique and every space is going to be unique. So in some spaces, the CEO is actually the person who takes up a lot of time. In other spaces, that's not true. All right, let's see. The last piece of the question that we want to touch on for the last few minutes is, what do you need to bring forward in yourself for you to share? What parts of yourself might you need to hold back, or what would you hope others hold back or bring forward? These are going to be our intentions. No one else can hold you to these, but they're really important for people to hold on to for themselves. Yes, that people will be open-minded. That people have the courage to be vulnerable. That is really hard. Yes, that people will make an effort to be diplomatic. I love that. I feel like every time I do one of these, I always take away some new language or some new framing for a new agreement structure and intention that I never heard about before. Yes. Hold back acting out your emotions while at the same time being able to get your emotions across. When I was taught at Essential Partners, one of our wise elders said one time that it's about speaking for your emotions, not from your emotions. So you don't want to be flooded with anger, flooded with frustration and acting out, but you want to be able to say, gosh, I am so frustrated. I'm so angry. I'm so disappointed. In some spaces, feeling calm is really important. So this is actually one of the things that I will say, and this is where we'll kind of bring it full circle back around. And this actually is when I teach, where I find negotiation and mediation to be most valuable. And for those of you who are ADR practitioners, this will sound like more traditional interest-based negotiation, because some folks will need different things. Groups will need different things. Sometimes groups will need contradictory things. So for instance, some folks in the group might say, I really need a calm space. And other folks will say, I actually really need a space where I can articulate the power of my emotions. And those two things could come into contradiction, or they could come into a little bit of conflict. And that piece is where negotiation comes in handy, because you can say to this group, I hear two things. I hear that on the one hand, a calm space is important. On the other hand, a space where we can talk about our emotions is important. How do you want to navigate that together? What's most important about this? What's the interest at the heart of this? What's the interest at the heart? Absolutely. I love the idea of spraying lavender in the room before starting. Another thing that you can do is you can slow down the conversation. Right? So when people share a lot of emotion, you can take lots of breaks to kind of ease the tension in the air a little bit. You can intersperse it with some team building or some games, right? You can, have chocolate in the room ready to go. So there's so many options, right? A lot of people, I've had classes where people have very different perspectives on what to do to support folks if they show emotion. Absolutely. So, are there any other questions that have come up? Let me actually take a quick pause and look back at the chat. Molly, did I miss anything else in the chat that you would recommend touching base on?
Nikki just let me know that David wanted to ask if there were case studies or vignettes written up to look at, and I didn't know, maybe just the website is the best place to do that. He's wondering if it's on Amazon or somewhere else.
Amazing. That's a great question. So I will share two links in the chat. Let's see, one of them will be our resources section. on our website, and that includes our nuts and bolts guide, which is our kind of overall 200 pages of information about this. But there are also exercises like the one that we're doing today, as well as other ones. And then you can also see, in terms of case studies or vignettes, you can see our stories on our website as well. That includes some of the ones that we had in this slideshow, as well as some other ones in context-specific spaces. Yes, translating to 2 hours court predicted mediations. Yes. This I've done quite a bit, and I will say there are a couple of tools. I think that the tools you can actually probably have access to and know from your own experience. But a couple of things that I have done are when either setting up the space or reading the file. So, and oftentimes in court mediations, you'll get a file and then start the mediation. So there's no real room to do some preparation. There's no real room to kind of get grounded or to be really dialogic. And oftentimes you will have a time limit on what the judge will allow before they say, all right, come back, you know, this isn't working. So one of those things that you can do is you can say, while you're reading the file or setting up the space, so reading the file in virtual spaces or setting up the space if you're in a courtroom, you can say, I'd love for you to just think about 2 or 3 questions. The first question is, what do you wish the other side really understood about your perspective? The second question might be something like, if everyone were to leave, could you imagine a scenario in which everyone left happy? It's a miracle. Something happens and it just is perfect. What do you think would that look like? And the third might be, what do I as a facilitator or mediator need to do to help you stay present and productive in this conversation? And I usually tell them that each party will get the time that they need, and that we'll be doing a blend of joint session and private session. So that is an opportunity to use those structures and to use some structures. And then I'll usually say the 3X question. That's very kind. I think that a version of those 3 questions is in that resource that I shared on the resource pages. And the other thing that you can do is you can actually get into the room and say, you know, here's what I heard that both parties are looking for from me. And here's what I recommend for that in terms of a couple of just agreements, or you can say group norms or mediation ground rules or something that are usually similar to not interrupting each other, speaking one at a time, speaking for yourself. Generally very similar. Thanks, Molly. So there are a couple of things. So the intention, the agreements, the structures are still there. And I will say that's one of the things that I love about this particular exercise and this particular model is that this tool can be translated from the very kind of informal and the very short term to the very long term to whole organizational culture-wide initiatives. So we have campuses who now say, we actually start every meeting by going over the ground rules. We actually, or the communication agreements. Some teams will have in a university now have agreements listed out, as well as that constructive and vicious cycle. And they've made it their norm to say, are we in a constructive cycle here? Or are we in a vicious cycle here? And how do we get from a vicious cycle to a constructive cycle? So there are a few ways that this can be scaled up or scaled down. A lot of teachers and professors use this in their classes and actually spend about 30 minutes to an hour on a project or in an exercise like this to help create that kind of ground space for their class. And then they design their syllabus to get slowly more intentional as the semester or quarter goes on. So this actually is a great opportunity. So I'll just wrap this section up and then we can spend some more time on questions. But we do want to negotiate this. This is a tool to help negotiate different needs and how you begin to co-create culture. It's a way of lifting up that these decisions are already there, that these containers are already there. Every meeting, every class has a system, has a container. But this tool can help you recognize what's not working for you and then work with a group to co-create something different. It's also a way of lifting up that different people have different needs. It's a way of shifting ownership and expertise back onto the parties or participants. And it can be more or less formal. So sometimes when people say, yes, but how do I use this if I'm talking to my roommate or I'm talking to my significant other about childcare or about doing the dishes? This is very much me, but my husband and I have actually had the conversation about, what does it look like when we speak really well to each other, when we have differences well, and then we just say, hey, can we, for this particular conversation, agree to let each other finish talking before the other one steps in? Can we take a break whenever somebody asks for it? Things like that. All right, so with that, let's pause and wrap this up with some other questions. For this, if it's all right, I'm going to remove my spotlight. Actually, let's continue to use the chat because it seems like that's been working really well, and I want to honor that. So let's continue to use the chat for any questions that come up, or if folks really strongly prefer, feel free to use the raise hand function. Thanks, Nikki. And I'll just add, particularly welcome any questions that you're thinking about as you take this back to your context, as you think about using communication agreements in your context or trying this out in your space. I know it's a lot of information at once. What happens if you have a person in the community who will not follow the rules or even gets antagonistic? Great question. I love that. So a couple of things that you can do. The first thing that I'll say is that this is part of the reason why co-created agreements are so important. That if the agreements feel like the participants instead of like something that you are imposing, it's easier to bring people back in because you're bringing them back to their best intentions for themselves. The way I oftentimes frame agreements is that these agreements are ways that you want to be fully participating, that you want to be communicating. It's my job to help keep you to those. So if I notice someone slip up, I'd like to be able to step in and just remind you of those agreements. So that's best intentions. It also is a way that if they get antagonistic, it also is a great way for you to transition to saying, is this still the process that you want? Because there are many ways that people can engage across differences, many ways that people can get involved in their community. And I actually will never, ever tell a person that this is the best or only way to do that. I think it's the most effective. I think it's important for a community to do that, but it's not the only way. It's not the only way that change can happen. One of our practitioners, Ray Rawls, she will often say, what you want is the room down the hall. Or she'll say, I love dancing, but an MRI is no time for dancing, right? So there are ways to engage across difference. But if the group feels like this is theirs, then you can easily bring them back, or you can say, I'm here to serve you in this process. This is what I heard you needed. Is this still the process for you, or do we need to rethink what we're doing here? Right? The other thing that I'll say is that people often slip up. It's okay if people slip up. And actually intervening is a lot less stressful when you're intervening on agreements that are observable and objective and that are owned by the participants. It's oftentimes as simple as, hey, y'all, I'm going to remind you that we agreed not to interrupt each other for this conversation. I'm going to ask that you hold on to that for later and move on. That's it. And you can do so with legitimacy, even if you are younger, newer to this field, newer to this work, you can sit in knowing that that is your role and responsibility to do. Let's see. Now, what do you do when the meeting becomes a boxing ring? This is why I started with the cycles. because we believe that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of response. It is so much easier to prevent a meeting from becoming a boxing ring to having to interrupt it in the midst. For any of you who have mediated a mediation gone sour, you know all too well that once it's off the rails, there's very little you can do. However, if you can create those guardrails and bring them back sooner, it actually never becomes a boxing ring. So we oftentimes talk about facilitating tight to loose. Early on, you intervene a lot on the little things. Someone says a small thing that isn't speaking for themselves, like, everyone in Boston does this. I don't see what the problem is, right? And you can just intervene and say, look, I actually really want to hear from your perspective what you're thinking about right now. Could you share that from your own perspective? And it just reminds people early, frequently, and in small ways what the container is that you're creating. If it does become a boxing ring, truly, you know, you might ask folks if this process is serving them. I sometimes will do a kind of snarky, how's this going for y'all? Are you enjoying this? Is this fun? But you can also take a break and say, look, I'm realizing that something has gone off the rails here. I would really like for us to take a break. I'm going to follow up with each of you individually to see what went wrong, and we're going to try to do it better next time. I will also say this is why this model works so much better when you can do it over time, because you are going to learn more as you get better. Your group is going to hone as the group members change. They're going to hone and change what the structures, what the agreements, what the intentions are. So you can get better at it. I oftentimes call first dialogue with, or first conversation with any new organization, kind of a first pancake. It'll taste fine, but it might not be as good as your next few pancakes will be, right? You're going to get better as you go on. If you are facilitating a meeting and someone keeps talking who seems to have a mental health issue and therefore isn't responsive to some of the usual interjections by a facilitator, what might you do? So if you are noticing that, there are two things that you can do. Well, there are many, many, many things that you can do. Two things that come to mind for me. One of them is, especially if a person is self-aware in terms of what they need, I find that oftentimes folks who struggle with mental health issues can say, actually, I need this, right? I know what I need and I need this. So you can say, we're going to take more breaks. You can say, you know, it's okay if you don't make eye contact here. You can say, actually, like, if you need to make an outburst, that's okay. You can just leave the room for a second and come back. If you need to take a minute, you can come back. If you know that mental health issues are going to come up as part of a conversation, you also might have mental health providers on standby. In virtual spaces, it might look like extra breakout rooms that no one uses but are available if people need them. In real life spaces, it might be an extra room to the side or some space outside with a mental health provider there. And if you can also say, especially if you're new, you can also say, I'm not sure that I'm the best facilitator for this conversation. If you need someone with mental health expertise, you can turn to a co-facilitator with that mental health expertise who can help manage that situation. And help that person really join in a way that they want to join, in a way that and help them be heard in a way that they want to be heard, which is actually a gift for everyone, and especially for folks who have historically not been heard or have not been taken seriously in groups. How do you manage in a context that doesn't allow for any time to discuss rules? Oh boy, I would actually say avoid. Truly, I mean, what situation can you get in where you can't at least start the conversation by saying, look, in order for this to go well, I'm going to ask us to do 3 things. That takes 30 seconds. When I was facilitating multi-stakeholder engagement, even with, you know, many people, we started every single meeting with a slide over some ground rules and agreements. The first meeting and every meeting, I said, do these still work for you? Are these still the right agreements? And the first meeting, we did spend a few minutes going through things that I missed. The second meeting, maybe a minute. The third and fourth, sixth, seventh, eighth meetings, we just went through them again. I think that one of the things from my own experience is that, so we had a big effort within my own organization to create an evaluation system. It sounds very innocuous. Not a whole lot of people are going to get excited about evaluation systems. However, the first part of that is identifying and defining what we think our impact is going to be as an organization. Now, we've been around for 30 years, and that conversation brought up some feelings. That conversation brought up some differences. So what we thought would be a very simple process that we were actually beholden to a funder for, we had timelines, we had deliverables, we had to pause. And we said, look, actually, we can't go forward until we have this conversation well, and we decide together what we think our impact is going to be, and that will help everything else move forward. We missed the first we missed the first reporting deadline to our funder. We were just a little bit behind, but we were early every single one thereafter, because everything moved faster once that piece was done. And I think that's true. So if you can set these ground rules early, if you can create space, that little bit of time on the front end will maximize your value and your impact in the back end. Let's see, 1 hour on Zoom. Okay, if you have a person who needs more time to use much of the time, I would ask, and I can always follow up with this afterwards, but what it means to need more time, because there are different levels of need. There's need in terms of actual ability to communicate. There's also need in terms of people who just can't stop themselves. What I oftentimes say to people who take too much time, who seem to need a lot of airspace, is say, look, I want to help you be heard. It's my job as a facilitator to help you be heard by others. I have a worry that people are starting to zone out or glaze over as you go on. And so I'm recommending this agreement that let's try out, let's see how it goes, and let's see if it helps you feel more heard. So in my experience, it doesn't have to go off the rails. I also wonder how to join a death cafe. Let's see, we have a couple more minutes. All right. All right, I think that is all the questions that I've seen. Molly, did I miss anything?
Nope, you nailed it. I just
All
also
right.
wanted to say, if it's okay, that Harvey, I'm wondering about the other participants in your group, right? So it may feel a little tricky to have that conversation with the person who's taking up so much of the space, and also it might feel like really good to the other participants to have a little more time to contribute as well.
Yeah, thank you. What often happens though is this is a person who is in a stressful situation, parent dying or something like that, and really requires more time. And so I'm really concerned about whether I should mention at the very beginning of the meeting anything that would give them a feeling like they're taking up too much time.
Yeah, I know that we're close to the end of our time, so I want to honor that that's a bigger conversation and honor the time that folks have set aside. What I would briefly say is that's a great question for both structures and agreements, because you might say, actually, this person does need more time and this structure isn't allowing for it. So maybe you say, actually, we're going to do breakout groups, and you go in a breakout group just with that person and spend the whole time listening to that person. Or you go into small groups and that person gets much more time to share. My imagination, or you say, actually, we're going to do one-on-one office hours in addition to this, because in this space, we want everyone to be heard, but I'm going to open up an office hour once a month so that if you need more time than you have here, that time is available to you. Because I highly doubt most people don't want to make other people not have the time they need as well. Most people want everyone to have time, but they just know that they also need it. And so those two needs intersecting is where you can find the opportunity for negotiation of structures, agreements, and intentions. All right. Great. So we are about at time. What I would love to do before we leave is I have a very quick assessment that we always use as part of our practice to continue growing. I just put it into the chat. We want to continue to improve things like this to make sure that we're being as helpful as possible. It should take less than 5 minutes to do. There are 3 quantitative questions, 3 qualitative questions. It's also an opportunity for you to say that you'd like some follow-up if you'd like to chat more about this. So if you could take a few minutes before the top of the hour, before you sign off, to fill that out, I would be very, very grateful. It really helps me continue to improve. Yes. And then while you do that, I'll also say, Andrew, to your question about confidentiality, there are many thresholds of confidentiality, depending on the level of trust. It could be confidentiality upon request. It could be confidentiality of personal stories, kind of take the learnings, leave the stories. It could be full confidentiality. So there are quite, it depends on how long you get to be in this group, but as you create these, depending on the relationships of the group, the level of tenderness of the conversation, and the luxury of time that you have, take the time that it needs to really flesh these out for yourselves, because it will pay off in the long run. All right. So I think I will end my presentation there and give the organizers a couple of minutes to wrap up. I think that did Maria, Nikki, do you need that?
Maria, you're on mute, but thank you, Katie. And I hope you get a chance to review the chat, because there really was, just in addition to some great sharing, and I think ideas and verbiage that will help you think even more creatively about what you do. At the end, just a flood of thanks, and I know that we're all super appreciative for your time and the content of the program this morning. It was really engaging and very interesting. Maria, I think you're off mute now, so I'll hand back to you.
Nikki, ditto. Everything you said is so accurate. We can't thank you enough, Katie, for being part of this morning. It's been fabulous. And when we get the chat ready for you, you'll get to see it again and again. Thank you so much. Katie, are you able to hang around for a few minutes after 10? We sometimes hang around for another 10-15 minutes max, but the recording will be turned off at 10 o'clock and it goes back to informal chat.
That sounds great. I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes. Thank you all again for being here, for spending your morning with us, and I hope that we can stay in touch. Have a lovely day.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We will now turn off the recording.
I will turn it off, Maria, but I just want to give one last plug. If any of you haven't had the chance to explore Katie's website, there are so many resources there. And I know a lot of the questions coming in are, where can we find more about this or particular examples? So I just want to encourage everybody to check it out and really dive deeper and continue the conversation offline. So I will, with that final free plug, I will stop the recording.
Perfect.